Till the sun dies and the moons fall, Arbonne and Gavriel will not lie easily beside each other. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Gavriel's A Song for Arbonne. A Song for Arbonne is a standalone fantasy novel from 1992. It is in Kay's not historical setting of the 12th century Provence, or more like Languedoc, and a story inspired by the Albigensian Crusade. Blaise is from Gavriel and is a mercenary that worships the war god Kronos. Gavriel, corrupt and ruled by a puppet king, installed by Valença, that intends to conquer Arbonne to the south. In Arbonne, the goddess Rian is largely worshipped, and the country is ruled by women. Blaise gets involved with the politics as a priestess of Rian foresees his coming. There is the troubadour named Duke Bertrand de Talaire that is in feud with the nobleman Ert de Mirval. Also, the Countess of Arbonne is seemingly in dire straits. A very courtly vibe in the sense of romance and tied to music like that of Toulouse and other areas presently in the part of southern France. There's the typical sense of history, and with ancient and sometimes monumental ruins dotting the landscape as well. It doesn't read like a romance, though it's definitely taking inspiration from that. It's poetic, sure, but it reads like modern fantasy. I see people say it's de-romanticizing, but I find most people haven't read many romances in the old sense, and so probably don't know what they're talking about. It is very, they're very enjoyable to read romance anyways. I'm also just guessing, but there is love here. There's also violence, which you find in romances. There's even sex, which you find in romances. So that's like a romance. Even the religious aspects of revenge, redemption are there in romances. Maybe it is a romance, actually. Again, it doesn't read like the medieval ones. Maybe that's why many old speculative works are called such, like a science romance or a prose romance, etc., because they read a lot like romances. Maybe it doesn't have a happy ending, but I'll let you find that out. Actually, that is something I didn't really jive with this book. But of course, this is not from the past, but it is fantasy dealing with the past while not actually being set there. It starts in spring, ends in winter, hint, hint. I just a good chance to mention my pet peeve of Kay setting these in a secondary world that is so very obviously and very much not changed enough. I feel like from our world for there to be a reason for it to be in a secondary world. You can take our world and change a lot and still be in our world. I feel like it would make more sense in our world. That's just pet peeve. I mean, look at something like The Dragon Waiting. It works really well in our world, but it's very different. Anyways, I digress. There are lots of characters. There's Blaise, Lisette, Rosala, Luciana, Bertrand, Ariane, Thierry, Ronald, Adamar, Galbert, Ailis, Erta, Borsiar, Aurelian. There's lots of romance, and there's lots of crushes, there's lots of music. It is nice to see Troubadourite, a woman troubadour, and there's priestesses and a noble woman in power. In contrast, there's much violence against women and misogyny present as well. The story sets up characters and polities, though, before building into the action. I don't know, let's see. Another pet peeve is I really don't care for calling genitalia a sex. I think that is a trend that hopefully I don't know, maybe I only see it in like slightly older literature, but I really don't like it anytime I see it. I just think it's weird. It doesn't make any sense. It is really not a euphemism that works. So anyways, but here I get into kind of how the climax and just the story works for me. So if you want a good poem, actually, from the historical time period that Kay is taking this from, but it's obviously not an historical setting. This is one actually Kay probably didn't read, unless there's an earlier English translation that I'm unaware of, or he read it in the old Occitan. But that is The Song of the Albigensian Crusade, or sometimes called The Song of the Cathar Wars. It's an emotional story of triumph and despair as France fought, so Gavriel, in this case France, fought the south with, which, would be the southern nation, of course, with some lame religious excuses and led to things like, 20,000 people being massacred at Béziers, the massacre at Marmande, hundreds of thousands of people dead throughout the war, and battle massacres, other calamities. You do have a little bit of Narbonne, which is the real city. Arbonne is actually named for, but it actually plays really little in this 800-year-old conso. It is interesting, though, that 70% of Cathars were women, which is where I think Kay making the Southern Society matriarchal is coming from. This war, though, this real-life war, saw the county of Toulouse fall into French hands, French royal hands, really, and establishment of the Inquisition, and soon the end of the art of the troubadours. See something like The Music of the Troubadours by Elizabeth Aubrey if you want more information on that. So overall, while Kay has a much shorter conflict, a much happier ending, and I think it is a good example of a medieval world, medieval events inspiring fantasy. I think it is an example of it done well. I think it could have been done better. I really think it could have been done better. I think there's just so much from the actual Albigensian Crusade that could have came through more, and even the romance parts could have been done better. So, anyways, maybe I'm just being overly critical. I say that, and I say this saying it is done well, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it much more than The Last Light of the Sun, which is the first book I read by Kay. So, anyways, forgive me. I'll catch you next time.